Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am the Inconsequential Runner. I'm here with Coach Mark. Coach Mark, I've got a question for you. But firstly, welcome back to the channel, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Look, love it every time you come back because you give us important insights in bite-sized pieces. The other thing I love about it is you say it in really simple language. There's super science between what you're sharing, but you share it in a simple way so we can adopt it, which is the most important stuff. We're transferring what's in your head into our training plans. So help us with this. The question I've got for you today, Coach Mark, is how hard should we be training? Because there's a whole lot of stuff going around at the moment. And I think a lot of it shows maturity in terms of our understanding, in terms of how we should be training. Like the basic 80-20 rule that I think is pertinent, or not pertinent, but people are talking about a lot at the moment.
Yeah.
So with all the latest science and with what you know, Coach Mark, tell us how hard we should be training, because I think we need a little bit of clarity in terms of that. So yeah, what does hard training look like? Well, what should we be defining hard as?
Mm. Yes. Well, it's I guess hard to define exactly what hard is because it depends on the person.
Yep.
But I can say, and I can give everyone permission. You can train hard. You
Right.
know, I mean if you're looking at improving, you have to stress the body so that is forced to adapt in some way. So if you're just always training in a comfortable range, you will improve to a point, yeah, but you won't get those extra gains. Hence that 80-20 thing we're talking about. We're talking about the 20.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that's very important, that it's 20, because that's, most of the running that shows is easy, relatively easy. And that's really important because you need to bear in mind that one session in itself isn't going to make you as a runner, or your whole performance going forward isn't going to be based on that one session. It has to be part of a balanced week and month, really, because it's all about consistency of training.
Right.
Consistency is the keyest word. So bearing that in mind, you need to keep that in the back of your mind. And this obviously depends on your fitness. But if you're doing a really hard training session, which is great, but you need to bear in mind that you've also got the rest of the week you need to get through as well. There's no point doing some Olympian session and then having to sit out the rest of the week because you're stuffed. It's not going to achieve too much.
I feel like you're talking to me, Coach Mark. It's because you go through the magazines and stuff, and everyone likes to know what someone else is doing. So you see all the videos on YouTube in terms of day of the life of, and you want to look at what they're eating during the day and how their training is. The Ingebrigtsens, you might follow more, or someone a little bit more social. The likes of even a Ben Parks or something like that on YouTube. And you think, right, if I replicate what they're doing, then I will become them sooner or later. And I think what we don't realize is the huge jump between the two. But you're giving us permission to run fast, but not to the point where it sacrifices the rest of the week. So we need to be cognizant of our recovery. But thank you for giving us permission to work hard, because I think I've, just as a personal reflection, got a little bit soft with my the interval side of things. Use it as a bit of excuse. So you can train hard. I like what you're saying in terms of the consistency. So that consistent intensity, making sure that it happens all the time. You touched on something else, and I made a note on it. Oh, yes, sorry. And that's what I just covered in terms of not forsaking the rest of the week. Is there Is there something we can do to monitor then how that session that we've just done has impacted us if we've gone too fast or too hard? I mean, I know there's stuff like, your morning heart rate, and I monitor that, what
Mm.
heart rate overnight, and that can sometimes give me a bit of a clue on fatigue levels. And again, with some of the devices we wear, it talks about our battery levels and recovery.
Yeah.
Is there anything else
Yeah.
on top of that you'd recommend that we use to monitor? So we can push ourselves hard, we can train hard, but then we know that we're not sort of, doing things too intensely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the easiest one is the heart rate to do. That never lies, because
Yeah.
you can sometimes feel like you're tired and fatigued there, but your heart rate actually is telling you you're really not. But that doesn't lie. I think that's the best one, the heart rate in the morning. You can also get a gauge when you next come to do your next hard session, and it gives you it gives you permission to judge that one. You know how you're feeling. You think this isn't going so well. I haven't recovered from my last one, and then you go, and then it takes a bit of humility and go, well, I'm going to have to take this session a little bit easier and learn from the fact of maybe should have held it back a little bit more last time. But you learn as you go. Bearing in mind, as your year goes on, if you're training right, you get fitter and fitter, and your body gets more and more used to the hard sessions. So ideally, the next time you come to do hard session next week, you'll feel a little bit stronger and probably be able to cope with a little bit more.
Okay.
And if you've got a great endurance base as well, which is why that's the key of it, really, the key of everything. If you've got a good endurance base, you can handle harder training and you recover quicker. So that's win-win. That's that 80%.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, let me bounce a couple of things off you just before I do. So apologies to anyone who doesn't know what the 80-20 is. What the 80-20 is and if you don't, welcome to running, because that will be one of the first things you'll probably hear about. So 20% of your sessions, or anytime you put on your shoes, 20% of the time you're going to be looking at doing some sort of intense speed work, and 80% of the time easy runs. And I think what people are trying to convey with the 80-20 rule is making sure that 80% of your runs are super easy. That's what underpins that. Coach Mark, so coming back to what you said, something that really resonates is sometimes I do that same interval session and I'll do it, a couple of days later. So a couple of days, meaning 4. I shouldn't say couple, because couple means 2. 4 days later, and I feel just flat. I haven't got it or anything. So thank you. That really resonates, because what that might be telling me is I haven't fully recovered from my last session, which might mean my last session's too hard. So the other thing I'll ask you is, when we do our hard session and we work very hard, then at what point, while we're working very hard, should we stop? Should we go, that's enough? Is it a case of, stopping knowing that you could do 2 more reps of whatever it is you're doing? Or do you just go to the end? Or is there some sort of barometer or some sort of thing we can apply where we can work hard to that point, and if we stop at that point, we still get the gains of the hard work, but also we haven't gone past that point of, diminishing returns and elongating our recovery?
Yeah. Well, a really good gauge, and one I use often, and it's so easy to do now with smartwatches. Just look at the speed you're going at. If your speed is dropping, and generally you're running, you're running more than 1 rep of this or interval of the same, amount. Once your speed starts dropping, you could then, so say you're doing, so you originally have eight reps planned. Say you get to 5, and that's all good. Your 6th one is markedly slower and a lot harder work. So then you can then make a decision. You can then say, well, it might maybe my concentration was off or something. I could try another one.
Yep.
Try another one. If that one's also down, pull the plug, and that's good.
Yep,
That you've done a
gotcha.
good session.
Okay.
It's made it a good session. Is if you blindly plug on and do that 8th one because it's in the program, you know, you might turn what was a great session into, you know, an overtraining session where you're gonna be struggling to recover in time for your next hard one. So that's a really good gauge. Because often, I mean, people put sort of 8 reps, 10 reps, but because it's you know, that's a good number, you know, of load, a good amount of load, but it is just a round number. You know, I know again, Arthur Lydiard said, why not 9? Why not 11?
Yeah.
You see, so that's where it comes down to how you're coping with the session, and you can judge that based on your pace. I think it's the easiest way. Yeah.
Okay, and so final question, and just because I'm a bit of a numbers guy, or I like things served up to me in a real simple fashion, so sorry, I might be putting the pressure on with this one, but let me just come up with a couple of nominal numbers. So if I'm doing 200-meter intervals and I'm cruising at 30 seconds, say, and so what would define slow? Because if I was doing 30s, 31s, and I get a 31 or a 32, wouldn't worry me. But I'm thinking maybe a 10% difference. If I came up with a 33 or a 34, and then I backed it up to another 33 and 34 with the same intensity, that would, to me, so yeah, could we have a rule like a 10% rule, or where would you mark it? So say 30 seconds is the base, and anyone watching this can multiply out by that. But if you're running 30s, pretty much bang on, at what sort of number would you go, well, yeah, that's slow now, that's definitely a marked difference in speed. You should look at pulling slow.
I think 10% is a great number as a pull the plug.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're slow than 10%, which would be 33 compared to 30. So
Okay.
So it gives you that scope within it based on how you're feeling. If you're still feeling okay and you can plug on slightly slower, that's all good. But if you're just getting slow, 10%, I think, you've lost the point of the session really, and it's just then turning into this hard grind that's going to probably affect the rest of your week.
Yeah. What's the point? Something that was shared with me and it resonated with me, so I've held on to it. I think it was Steve Skillion in one of his videos, and he talked about, every time you dip a sponge in a bucket and you bring the sponge out, you imagine the bucket, the water being your training. There's no point putting the sponge back in until it's dry. So that's your recovery. You've got to be able to get your sponge dry before you dip it back into the bucket again. Because if your sponge is still wet, the next training session, you're not going to get anything, or very, very, limited sort of gain, being the water into the sponge from. So get the sponge dry. And I think we have a mindset, especially when we want to get quick, fast, of just putting that sponge just in the bucket continually, rather than, drying it out, getting the water out somewhere else and then getting it back in the bucket sort of thing. Because so anyway, that resonated with me. I thought I'd share that story just in case it resonates with someone else that's a little bit crazy like me, and maybe I
think it's great. I think it's great. I think you can't go too far wrong if you've always got in the back of your mind your next hard session, and keep that in the back of your mind, that you want to be able to do that well as well. So if you're thinking along those lines, you'll strike it about right, I think.
Perfect. Coach Mark, thank you so much. We really appreciate the fact that you spend your time for free sharing these insights. They're really powerful. Thank you so much. For those watching, there were some gold nuggets in that for you. Adopt them, take them into your running. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Those of you that have watched a few of these videos, you know what they're all about. We answer just one question per video, so you can choose which videos you watch, and there's gold in all of them. How you can support the channel, you know what to do. You hit like. It's doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps us. So thank you for hitting like. If you want to stay around, hit subscribe, and you'll be notified of other videos we've got. We've got one coming up soon. What's the other one we've got coming up next, Coach Mark? Oh, handling bad race results. We all have bad races. I always say bad race is better than no race. The reason why I've got so animated is I've had a couple of bad race results recently. But there's stuff you can take from them. I mean, look, we've all had that feeling where we just wanted to throw our shoes in the bin, cry in the corner where no one can see us, and quit. Luckily that doesn't last too long, but it is a pretty horrible feeling when you do a lot of work for a race and it doesn't go well. So let's cover that off in the next video. How to handle and get the most out of a bad race, because we all have them, and they come around way too frequently. So hit subscribe, and yeah, you'll see that video next time. Coach Mark, thank you so much. Again, if you want to get in contact with Coach Mark, just see the show details below. Coach Mark, thanks a lot. Catch up with you in just a moment, mate.
My pleasure.